puffins, the best way I can describe it is they sound like an angry chainsaw, but like a really small angry chainsaw.
I regret asking this question. Hello, and welcome to Good Nature. I'm your host, Megan Leslie. In each episode of this podcast, we talk to the people who give me hope for the future of nature and wildlife. And today, we're talking about puffins. Yes, puffins, that charismatic little seabird, the Atlantic puffin. And we're chatting with our guest, science communicator and puffin researcher, Jill Taylor. Jill has racked up hundreds of thousands of views on social media where she posts about puffin antics, the beauty of Atlantic Canada, and her adventures scuba diving off the coast of her home province, Nova Scotia. Jill is so enthusiastic about what she does, and she is a real ambassador for Atlantic Canada. It was an absolute delight to talk to her. But before we talk to Jill, it's time to check in with one of my WWF-Canada colleagues who has a bit of a nature hot take to share with us. This is the part of the show where we discuss ideas about nature and conservation that maybe we haven't questioned before. And today, we're using the Orcaphone to check in with WWF Canada's resident botanist, Ryan Godfrey. Ryan, I hear you have a nature hot take for me. Let's hear it.
I do, Megan. I have a hot take, but I have to warn you first. This is a very hot take, like a red hot, sizzling hot take. Are you ready for it?
Sizzling. I love it. Go for it.
Okay. So I live in a city. I am part of the urban ecosystem. And I'm going to advocate that there's another creature that belongs in the urban ecosystem, and one that not everyone may appreciate all the time, and that would be a four-legged furry friend called a coyote.
Yeah, they're not into the coyotes being in the cities.
Yeah, it's true. Not everyone loves a coyote. They can be a little scary at times, but they do really belong, Megan. And I'm going to make the argument that it's actually a good thing that we have coyotes as a top predator in our urban ecosystems.
Okay, I think a lot of people are going to disagree with you, but explain.
I'm prepared for that. That's why this is a hot take. See, the thing about ecological restoration is we don't just want to restore simple ecosystems with, just plants and maybe some bugs. We want complex ecosystems. And a complex ecosystem has many layers. We call those trophic levels. So you have the plants, then you have the bugs that eat the plants, you have the birds that eat the bugs that eat the plants, and then you want to go up higher than that. So like on the bird side of things, you might have a hawk that eats the birds that eats the bugs that eats the plants. And on the mammal side of things, you have bunnies and squirrels, and then you gotta have something above that to eat and control.
Do we, Ryan?
We do,
do we?
Megan, we really do. It's ecosystem health, it is resilience,
It's nature.
It's nature. It's nature. It's circle of life. And the coyotes are doing that in a beautiful way. These eastern coyotes are actually a novel species. They're a hybrid comprising genetics from an endangered eastern red wolf along with western coyotes. There's a little bit of domestic dog mixed in there. Sometimes there's a little bit of gray wolf mixed in. So they're a species that hasn't been seen on the landscape prior to European colonization. But now they're here. They're doing their thing. They are thriving in urban ecosystems, and they're doing such an important function. And I think that we should learn to coexist with them.
Well, you've convinced me. I agree. Thanks for that really great hot take.
Cheers.
Today on Good Nature, I am chatting with Jill Taylor, a researcher, underwater videographer, and science communicator based in Atlantic Canada. Jill is an expert in what she calls North America's most charismatic seabird, the puffin. Jill, thank you for joining us on Good Nature today. I am so excited to talk about puffins with you. It's going to be great.
Thanks so much for having me, Megan. I'm very, very excited to chat about, yes, the world's most charismatic seabird, the Atlantic puffin.
Most charismatic. So, Jill, Canada's home to a lot of iconic species, right? We've got the narwhal, which is the unicorn of the sea. We have caribou with their stunning migration across the tundra. Grizzly bear, a symbol of wild spaces. And then there is this funny little bird that, to me, looks like a flying potato. So the puffin. Jill, please describe the puffin for us.
You're not that far off. They are pretty much like flying potatoes.
They are, thank you.
They have a pretty short wingspan for their size. So they have to flap really fast to be able to stay in the air. But yeah, the Atlantic puffin, very small seabird, typically smaller than what a lot of people think they are. I think zoom lens photos distort the size maybe a little, and people think they're going to be the size of penguins. But they only sit at about like the size of just under a ruler, so just under 30 centimeters. A big potato, but a small seabird.
Yeah.
And yeah, they have this classic black and white contrast, but the big, beautiful bill, this bright orange bill that comes through in the breeding season is the iconic part of their look. They look like they're wearing little tuxedos, and they have lots of funny names. I think they've been called sea parrots. Their Latin name translates to little brother of the north.
Oh my gosh.
Hatchet face, I think, is another name for them. So yeah, they've got some nicknames, that's for sure.
Little brother of the north. That is a winner. So the first time I ever saw a puffin, I was with some WWF supporters. We were on a seabird cruise in Babel's, Newfoundland. You know the one.
Yes.
And I kind of thought we'd go out on the water and the guide would be like, look, there is a puffin. And over there is another puffin. I kind of thought we'd just see one or two. And holy cow, was I wrong. Because they're in colonies. Can you paint us a picture of a puffin colony? What does it look like and sound like?
For sure. Well, first of all, I'm glad that you've been, so you know exactly what I'm describing. You've seen this with your own eyes. Yeah, there's definitely more than one or two in these colonies. The first thing, for those who've never been to a seabird colony, you often smell them before you see them. So there's this unique smell. It's good that there's a sign of activity, and it means that they're hunting for fish and they have food to eat. But there's like a bit of a stinky, fishy smell to it, a little bit of like a seaweed, dried seaweed on the beach kind of smell. But there's also this like sickly sweet smell on top of that as well, which I think is the best way to describe a lot of birds all coexisting together. But oftentimes these are in the North Atlantic. They're often really foggy days. So sometimes you'll actually smell them before you actually physically see them in the fog parts.
I remember that. Yeah.
yeah. I'm sure that smell would take you right back. But yeah, a lot of these islands are these steep rocky cliffs with the peaty soil on top with lots of grass and muddy slopes. And these seabirds select these islands so that they're away from predators. So they're out of harm's way from other land mammals that could dig up their young or their eggs, like foxes and mink and otter and other animals like that. But then it's just the sheer volume of activity is really probably the most amazing thing that you get to see. Once you've gotten over the smell, you're seeing there's activity above you. There's all this overhead traffic. I'm still unsure how they don't all just collide into each other all the time. And then there's activity on the water. There's lots of birds. What we call rafting is when they float on the surface. And then there's lots of birds below that are constantly diving down and ducking down to find food and to fish. And the specific colony that I've worked on is in Witless Bay Ecological Reserve. So that is the largest puffin colony in all of North America, second largest in the world. And we're talking about over 1 million seabirds from 9 different species in the summer breeding months.
Just in this one area.
Yeah. And so, yeah, this reserve itself is a collection of 4 islands. So that is spread out, but still 1 million of anything is a lot to quantify.
Yeah. No kidding. You know, you talked about the activity. And so I was on a boat. I was several hundred meters away from the island. And that activity, holy smokes, like there was all this whirring. I have videos of the puffins whirring above me. And it felt like they were whirring along the surface of the water. And they were just everywhere. It felt like they were dropping. I mean, they weren't dropping, but it felt like they were dropping from the cliffs and dropping from the sky and popping up from the water. It's incredible activity.
It really is. Yeah, you'll often like puffins themselves don't have like a specific song like a lot of birds we think of.
Oh,
They have like a specific call. So the puffin portion, they do make sounds, but they is very quiet relative for any kind of bird nesting activity. And so often you just hear the flapping of their wings because they're flapping so hard.
yeah.
So you hear the whoosh whoosh. And then, but yeah, they're dropping off the cliffs all the time. They're not the best flyers, so they often will waddle up and climb up to the top of these cliffs and let gravity do your work for them. But yeah, there's lots of, I've seen puffins surfing waves. They seem to be quite playful, and this is all coexisting with the other seabirds that they're living with, that they're other neighbors. Like you have the puffins that are on the grassy burrow slopes where they've dug out all their burrows. And then you have the rocky cliffs where all the kittiwakes have their eggs on the edge of cliffs. And you're like, how do these not roll off? And then you have the murres and you have the razorbills, and then you have other gull species and the bald eagle couple that scares everyone when they make their rounds around the island. So there's a lot going on.
They're coming.
Yeah.
I also want to know, like we've been talking about them being kind of adorable and a bit silly and clumsy. So there's a bit of a caricature about them. What do you wish that people understood about puffins kind of beyond their reputation?
I think in general, they have a fairly good reputation in that they're known as being cute, like you just said. They are a huge driver for tourism in the province. They are a provincial bird in Newfoundland and Labrador. And
I didn't know that.
they're on people's bucket lists to see them. People make trips to Newfoundland just to see them. And I think a lot of people don't realize that you don't have to go to Iceland to see puffins. You can see them right in Canada, which is really special. But yes, obviously known as very cute. People want to get their photos and say they've seen a puffin and all that good stuff. I think in general, we have maybe a misconception as humans that birds kind of have this bird brain, or they're not that smart, and they're kind of dumb or silly. And we love as humans to do this hierarchy where we're at top and we're the most intelligent. I don't even think that's a good word to use, but the smartest at the top. And then we rank all these other animals based on, could they make an Excel spreadsheet, and could they go to do taxes and stuff like that, or go to the moon?
Can puffins do taxes?
Newsflash, they cannot, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Figured.
Good for them, though. They got an escape.
They would try hard.
They would. But I think a lot of looking at any sort of wildlife is looking at their environment and their habitat and what they've needed to evolve to be able to do to be successful in that environment. And one thing that puffins, they do very well in the water and are very comfortable. They can dive up to 60 meters. They're very agile in the water. But they make these large migrations where they spend the winters away from their islands out at sea, and then they make it back to the same islands every year, which is incredible. Without a GPS, I surely could not do that. And I think another incredible part of that is not only do they make it back to those islands, they also make it back to the same burrow every year. And if they can't get that exact burrow, they'll stay within a 2-meter radius of that burrow. So their directional skills are very impressive.
Yeah. And they're real specialists. They know what they've evolved to be exactly what they needed to be.
Exactly. They know how to do what they need to do.
Yeah. So Jill, at WWF-Canada, we do a report called the Living Planet Report Canada. Sometimes we call it LPRC, and comes out from time to time. And it really reports on the state of wildlife populations across Canada. And, spoiler alert, they're not doing well. On a global scale, we know that Atlantic puffin numbers are in decline. But we even put them on the cover of our 2020 report because here in Canada, the puffin populations are rising. Can you tell us a little bit about why that is?
Yeah, so the Atlantic puffins globally are on the IUCN red list. So they are considered, I think, vulnerable. And that is large in part to the populations in Iceland have taken a hit in recent years.
Okay. And that list is like this international species at risk list.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
What it comes down to is globally they're at risk. I mean, you can say this almost about every species, but climate change is a large pressure, and that is something we have to acknowledge, that we're seeing warmer water temperatures, warmer ocean temperatures, and a lot of the forage fish that puffins rely on to feed themselves and to feed their young are seeking cooler waters, and they've only evolved to dive so deep. They're really good at diving, but if these fish are looking for colder water, these puffins have not yet evolved to be able to dive as deep to get the fish that they need.
Fascinating.
And this
Okay.
often looks like they actually have to travel further to get the fish that they need, which means they're expending more energy, they're more tired, they're maybe not making it back to feed their chick enough or feed themselves. Another part of that fish problem is that anthropogenic reasons is that overfishing does deplete these fish stocks. Even in Canada, so in Newfoundland, puffins, their two favorite fish that they're eating are sand lance and capelin, which are both very important fish for the ecosystem. The capelin roll every year is this really magical thing. The humpback whales come up to chase the capelin. The cod are chasing capelin. The puffins are chasing the capelin. Capelin are amazing. But even historically, we're seeing like the capelin fishery does still exist. And I think the capelin stock is at like 9% of its historical biomass. So definitely a little concerning there.
Yeah.
But yes, within Canada, the population seem to be fairly stable and good. Like, I want to knock on wood that things can change so quickly. We want to see, hopefully, that they continue to do okay. This is why we have scientists like myself and other colleagues who are out monitoring these populations every breeding season to make sure we know what's going on with the puffins and are able to respond if anything does change. So again, always something to keep in mind of, but we definitely, those same pressures do face the Canadian puffins, but I think there's just a few less of those pressures added on.
Well, can I ask you, because I thought it had something to do with bycatch as well. So this idea that when you're fishing with nets, you are fishing for a specific fish species, but you catch other things. And wasn't there, maybe a bit more past tense, wasn't there an issue around puffins being caught as bycatch as well?
Yeah, that's definitely always a risk. I know I had some colleagues who are working on looking at ways to deter birds from coming into where they were netting fish. So using like fake avian predators of like fake gulls or eagles on fishing vessels to see if that could deter, kind of signal to birds of like, oh, stay away, don't come in this area.
Interesting.
Definitely always a risk. And so, yeah, all of these things can impact puffins for sure.
So that example you used of, fake predators to keep the puffins away so they don't end up caught in these nets, that is a conservation action. It is taking action to prevent accidentally killing some of these birds. That is also an action that is really specific out there in the ocean, happening on fishing vessels. Are there actions that we can take in the broader coastal ecosystem to support them as well? And what are some of the actions we could take?
Yeah, we now have evidence that we had thought this to be true, but we didn't know for sure that puffins were attracted to artificial light at night. ALAN is the acronym there.
I've heard of this.
When puffins fledge, so they fledge in Witless Bay Ecological Reserve mid to early August every year. Basically, they're kicked out of the burrow. And we think that puffins likely use the moon as some kind of navigation at night, but sometimes they'll mistake that coastal lights in cities that are close to the colonies and head in towards these cities instead, which that puts them at risk because they become stranded there. They're not able to get food. And then there's predators like outdoor cats, foxes, even large rats. Like, these fledglings are not that big. So that risk then for being predated, which is unfortunate. So your question was, what can we do? This is a twofold question. Answer is that there is this really lovely program called the Puffin and Petrel Patrol. So every year in August near these coastal areas, you can volunteer if you're there in the area. Even if you're visiting as a tourist, you can take your family. Kids are more than welcome, and you can sign up, and you basically take your headlamp. You go out when it's night, and you go around and find if there's any fledglings or pufflings in the area.
So good.
And then the organizers take them, and then they release them the next day or the next few days out on the water, and they get to go live their merry life and hopefully do well and use the moon for direction instead of the city lights.
I love that.
But another part of that is even just being mindful of the sorts of, if you live on a coastal place, not even just where puffins are, but lots of seabirds who are attracted to artificial light at night, is that just being mindful of like what kind of shed lights you have on. If you have lots of porch lights, like maybe you have a lot of pot lights around and you have like 8 and it's really bright, it's like, okay, maybe you don't need that on at night after a certain point. If you're going to bed, like shut those off. I know there's lots of work in the works to look at even like grocery store parking lots and other like larger infrastructure buildings like schools and street lights to look at like the angle of the lights.
Yeah.
I think there's works to maybe if they're angled down in a certain way, they're less attractive to birds or other wildlife that might confuse them for something else.
That's awesome. Jill, I want to switch gears a little bit. You have spent a lot of time on land with puffins, but you also post a lot about your adventures scuba diving off the coast of Nova Scotia. And I can only imagine that spending so much time underwater must give you a whole new perspective. And I'd love to ask you, how does that change the way you see the places that you study?
I think it helps me see the full picture almost, in that there is a whole other world that exists under the surface that not a lot of people get to see. We live, especially if you live on the coast, like a lot of humans do in the world live by the coast. It's like this whole other, it feels like the closest you could get to going to outer space while staying on the same planet. And especially with puffins, I think maybe I didn't know this yet, but I was scuba diving before I researched puffins, and puffins are really good divers. So maybe that's part of what drew me to them as well. But getting to see that underwater portion of their life, because it's such a big part of their life and how they get food and how they live and exist in this habitat is really cool to be. And I have seen puffins, not overly common to see them, but I have seen them on a few dives, which is cool to see them underwater. And they zoom away pretty quickly, but to get a glimpse is really special.
I imagine. Do you have a moment from one of those dives that really sticks with you?
Yeah, that is a special dive. I don't know. I can never pick one. There's so many special moments. I think all of them kind of accumulate to being really special. I think even this past summer, getting to see wild Atlantic salmon in the ocean, potentially like the first footage of wild Atlantic salmon in Canada. We know a lot about their freshwater portion of their life cycle, but in the ocean, it's really hard to see them, like a needle in a haystack, a really, really big haystack. Or even just like little things too, like diving and taking a moment to slow down and see and appreciate like the smaller invertebrates and the macro things around us, like sea slugs. Nova Scotia and Newfoundland are really good for seeing sea slugs. And yeah, it's a bit more of like a treasure hunt to try to find them. You definitely have to use your, I don't know what the word is, your detective skills a little bit, but makes it more rewarding.
Yeah, no kidding. I am so glad that you brought up sea slugs. Not a sentence I ever thought I would say. But I love watching your videos because I think that your joy for what I would call the creepy crawlies, your joy for creepy crawlies really shines through. And if I were ever swimming and saw a sea slug, if you ever told me that I would see a sea slug while swimming, I would probably freak out. But when I see your videos, I see the beauty in them. I see how special they are. And like, I want to be a sea slug champion. So I just wonder, when you're making these videos, when you're trying to bring these stories to life for people, what's going through your mind? What are you thinking about?
Well, first of all, I'm glad to say we've maybe converted another person to being a sea slug fan.
I'm there.
Nice. Yeah, I think slugs in general, again, puffins really sell themselves. They don't need any help with their PR because everyone thinks that they're cute. I think a lot of things that live more under the ocean, even fish, I feel like people don't think are cute. But I think it just speaks to the amazing biodiversity that we do have in Atlantic Canada. I think other parts of the world, obviously, tropical ecosystems underwater, like coral reefs, like everyone loves a coral reef. We know those are beautiful. We've seen really beautiful imagery. That's amazing. We should keep appreciating them. But I feel like Atlantic Canada doesn't get the same amount of attention for the beauty that we have here. Yes, like I said, it's not as flashy. Maybe it's not as quite in your face. You have to look a little harder for it. But I do think that makes it more rewarding. And I think it's a little maybe more incognito. But we have bright red and pink sea slugs that are hiding out. And another really cool dive that comes to mind is a photosynthetic sap-sucking sea slug, the Eastern Emerald Elysia, which is found in Nova Scotia.
Oh, okay.
So cool that we have this weird blend of like plant to animal that we have. Like, I wish I could photosynthesize. I think that's so cool. They steal chloroplast from the algae that they eat, and they can incorporate it into their own cells and steal energy from the sun. Like the fact that we have this wide variety of abilities in these animals. Yeah, there's so much to appreciate.
You know, you're right. It's not as flashy on the Atlantic coast, but I want to thank you because I have learned that it's a lot flashier than I thought. It's definitely a lot flashier than I thought. And so I think about your audience, and probably when you're doing science communication like this, it's a great tool for, on the one hand, you can meet skeptics where they're at. And on the other hand, you're providing content for people who are already engaged and interested. So it must be a real range of audiences that interact with your work.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I think in general, I've been very lucky in that my work on social media, there's been a really just overall positive reaction to it. I think it's hard to hate on puffins. I think you'd have to be pretty cold-hearted to do that.
Oh my, I'll find them. And I will give them a stern talking to.
Thank you, Megan. But as for the scuba diving, I think an overall reaction, and this is one I love getting over and over again, is just people being like, I grew up here my entire life and I had no idea this was in my backyard. And I love that. I think it's really empowering to be able to know the animals in your own backyard and to be able to go outside and name the species that you're looking in front of you. I think a large part of what drives me to share the way I do, I love being out in nature. So I just am happy to film and capture that of the cool things that I'm seeing. I think a large driving force of this is that you really care about the things that you can name, and we want to protect the things that we care about. So I think in essence, that's really what, that's really my driving philosophy.
So yes, absolutely. We care about the things that we know and understand and can name. And I think you've done it's obvious to me, the work that you do has really connected people differently to wildlife, to their environment. Have you ever seen some of your content change the way that someone thinks or even acts about wildlife or conservation? Have you seen it in that context?
I think a lot of the first step to conservation is the recreating part. So if you're recreating in an area, then you're like, oh, this is really important to me. I use this personally. Maybe I don't want it to be privately developed. Maybe I still want to be able to access it as a kind of public land. And I want the wildlife that I see and enjoy to be there when I go there, and this area not to be degraded. So I think that's really the first step, is that personal piece of oh, well, I recreate here, so I'd like this to be protected. And I think that then continues onwards to other smaller conservation pieces, whether that means maybe people they're going to volunteer with conservation orgs that are important to them, or maybe that means voting in ways that they want to protect these natural spaces close to them that they want. I think a lot of what I get to see is just the joy of people seeing animals for the first time, or people being like, I've always wanted to see puffins. And then the follow-up of, I got to see my first puffin this past summer. And I'm like, I'm so happy that you got to have this experience, and now we can bond over this puffin experience. So if puffins
I got to see my first sea slug this summer.
Exactly. Yeah, no, and I get to hear that too. Yeah, I feel like the larger audience is more drawn in by the puffins, and then you have some more niche people that are like, I know what a sea slug is now. And I saw one when I was out snorkeling, or when I was out tide pooling, or something like that.
Awesome. Jill, thanks so much for this conversation. On this show, we actually end every interview with a bit of a lightning round series of questions that we call, it's the trail mix.
Okay, nice.
So I'm going to ask you a quick question, and you've got to give me a quick answer. You ready?
Okay, I'm ready, Megan.
Okay, this is a lob ball for the first one, okay? Favorite puffin fun fact?
They don't look the way they do all year round. They lose parts of their bill. Their bill plates fall off.
No, they don't.
Yeah, they do. And the feathers around their eyes darken. When researchers were first studying them, they thought they were a completely different species, which I think is so fun that they had fooled them. But it's the same. The puffins just look different in overwintering. And then in the breeding season, they put a lot of energy into producing this bright orange bill. But yeah, they look really different. They look more goth in the wintertime.
Well, that's a wrap, because that blew my mind. We're done here. I did not know that. Thank you. This was supposed to be quick.
Do I get bonus points for being something you didn't know?
Absolutely. Well, I know everybody knows a lot more than I do. But holy Toledo, I did not know that. Okay, Megan, we got to be quick here. So obviously, puffins are the best seabird. So what is the second best seabird?
I'd go with the northern gannet. Beautiful bird,
Ooh.
our largest seabird in the North Atlantic. They very much look like graceful flying torpedoes. They can dive really quickly, really deeply. They're white and snowy, but their eyes are blue and they have a bit of orange or yellow on their heads. Very majestic.
Beautiful divers. Jill, can you teach me how to do a puffin impression?
How much are you willing to pay, Megan? All right. We can do this.
Yeah?
Puffins, they have, the best way I can describe it is they sound like an angry chainsaw, but like a really small angry chainsaw.
I regret asking this question.
So you're going to really want to go to the back of your throat a little bit, okay? Like a little, and you want to keep your mouth closed because it's going to sound like, you want to sound like you're underground in a burrow that you just dug out, and you're kind of like, you're there, but you're just a little further away, okay? So you're underground.
I'm picturing it. Okay.
So, and they kind of peter off. They like start and then they go a bit. So I'm going to try to do one. And hopefully I don't butcher this. But it's kind of like this. It's like, and they trickle down like that. But it's like very, very throaty and very muffled.
Okay, I'm going to give it my best shot.
I say you got to do one now.
Yeah. No, you did it. It sounded perfect to me.
Thank you.
Okay.
That was good. There you go. Megan the Puffin, live on this podcast.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. Next question. Okay, and this might make me tear up a little bit because I miss Nova Scotia so much. What's your favorite thing about Nova Scotia?
Probably the eelgrass meadows. Just speaking from a ecosystem, the people are amazing, but I think our eelgrass meadows here are absolutely gorgeous. Bright green underwater. They provide habitat for so many fish and invertebrates. They're like a nursery. Yeah, I feel like I could swim or frolic, snorkel over eelgrass meadows for days and I would never get tired of it.
Love it. And Jill, what is one thing that everyone can do right now to help protect puffins and other seabirds? What can we do?
So a large portion of it is, we've been talking about the colonies in Newfoundland and Labrador, provincial bird, well known. I think a lot of it, maybe a little cliche, but starts with awareness. Like I grew up in Nova Scotia and I didn't even know we had puffins in Nova Scotia. We have smaller colonies, but we do have puffins in Nova Scotia, which I think is really special. So I think if you're able to and you are interested in puffins, like using your vacation and tourism days and dollars to go enjoy puffins, go enjoy puffin, like reputable puffin tours that go, like the one you mentioned that you did in Babel's. What a beautiful tour. I'd recommend that to anybody. But yeah, just going back to the whole, we care about the things that we know about and getting to see and having that personal experience. Like, oh, I saw puffins on my vacation. Or even if these are places that you live, like you have puffins in your own backyard and to take pride in that. Like that's something really special and is something that we want to protect. And we want these puffins to return every year, forever and ever.
Perfect. Jill, I have greatly enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much.
Me too, Megan.
Thanks again to today's guests, Jill Taylor and Ryan Godfrey. And thank you for joining us today on Good Nature. You can stay up to date on Good Nature and everything else happening at WWF-Canada by signing up for our newsletter, Living Planet News. It's a really great newsletter, but it's pretty new, so we are trying to double our subscriptions, and we'd love it if you could help us out. The link is in the episode description. And if you have any thoughts on the show, ideas for episodes, or questions to share, please leave a comment. Or you can leave me a voice message. Just go to speakpipe.com/WWF Good Nature. The link will be in the episode description, and I can't wait to hear from you. See you next time.